Mr Speaker.
Eugenie Sage.
I'm not sure what I've been listening to. Is an attempt by the minister to have a transplant of personality to go from being a doer farmer to some sort of clown. Well, he may be bucolic, he may be full of the joys of spring, but that just highlights how this government skates over the environmental impacts of its focus on a pollution economy. Because, Mr Speaker, it's been very distressing listening to the people in Havelock North this week, their descriptions of the impacts of gastroenteritis, the days off school, the days off work, cafes having to close, and over 4,500 people being very sick. And we've seen similar problems with E. coli and Campylobacter being reported in water supplies around New Zealand, in Patea, in Darfield, in Hanmer Springs, in Springston. And when you get E. coli in water, you know that it's been contaminated with animal faeces. And that's what this government ignores, that its preoccupation with doubling the value of primary sector exports by 2025, by giving big handouts to agribusiness, by subsidising irrigation, has meant a huge expansion in dairying and intensive agriculture in New Zealand. And that means there's a much greater risk to drinking water, because it's a core principle that if we want clean water in New Zealand, we need to protect the sources of water supply. That's our rivers, our lakes and our aquifers. And yet in New Zealand we have one of the highest rates of gastroenteritis in the developed world. More than 6,200 people fell sick in 2015. That's not clean, green New Zealand, when we have a much higher incidence of gastroenteritis than Canada, than Australia, than England. We need to get serious about looking at land use and the consequences of that for our water. And that's what this government is in denial about. The minister can go on about growth in the agricultural sector. What he won't front up about is the impacts of that on our clean water. And it was a Labor government that developed a national environmental standard under the RMA for drinking water supplies. The purpose of that standard was to ensure that catchments were properly managed so that the source of drinking water was protected. And it will be very interesting in this inquiry into the situation in Havelock North whether the Hawke's Bay Regional Council has properly managed land in the aquifer recharge areas, or whether it's been preoccupied with promoting intensive agriculture and its compromised role as a regulator, and has been far too casual in the rules that it's got in its plans. But this government continues on to sacrifice clean water on the altar of agricultural intensification, and it's putting our economy at risk by doing that. Its failure to bring agriculture into the ETS means that the industry can freeload on the environment, not take account of the effects of its greenhouse emissions on the climate. Its weak regulatory response in terms of the National Policy Statement on fresh water means that we don't have decent land use controls to protect water, because this government is the master of the gesture. It's the master of doing a little in politics to try and persuade people that it's doing something. And I'm sure we will see that next week when the Minister for the Environment makes an announcement about swimmability. Because the government's failure to set a standard for swimmable rivers in the NPS has meant that councils have failed to control the land uses which are leading to pollution of our rivers, lakes and aquifers. We've got the problems in Havelock North. We've seen major increases in nitrate levels in waterways in places like Canterbury, Southland and the Waikato, where we've had major dairy intensification. We have 1.7 million hectares in New Zealand that is under dairy farms. We have 6.4 million dairy cows and another 3.5 million dairy cattle. That is equivalent to a human population of 140 million people, yet without any sewage treatment. Agricultural intensification is polluting our waterways. The government needs to get serious about protecting our environment, because we cannot have a healthy economy without a healthy environment. And the minister completely misses the point in thinking you can only focus on economic development without protecting the basis of that economy, which is our natural environment.
Tēnā koe. Paul